A simple woman walked into an upscale bank to make a large deposit for her nonprofit, dressed in modest clothes and carrying quiet dignity. Instead of respect, she was met with suspicion, stares, and whispered judgments. The manager sneered. People handling real money don't show up looking like they've just rolled out of bed. Her humiliation grew until her husband, a powerful figure, revealed her identity, founder of a renowned literacy foundation. The room fell silent. In that moment, appearances shattered, truths surfaced, and a culture began to change, sparked by a woman they thought was nobody. But she was everything. The morning sun spilled through the glass facade of Granite West Bank in downtown Denver, bouncing off polished marble floors and casting long shadows beneath high ceilings. It was the kind of place where everyone wore suits that whispered wealth, and conversations happened in hushed tones, the air thick with importance. Eleanor Price, 38, stepped into the lobby with soft footsteps and steady breath. She wore worn gray sweatpants, a faded blue hoodie, and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. Her chestnut hair was tied back in a loose ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, just a simple wedding band, and the faint scent of lavender soap. "Ready?" asked the man beside her. Eleanor turned to her husband, Matthew Price, 46, tall and sharp in a navy wool suit. The founder of a private equity firm with offices from New York to LA, Matthew had the kind of quiet power that didn't need announcing. "I've got this," she said, her voice light. "It's just a deposit and some paperwork for the literacy fund. We agreed foundation stuff stays with me." He smiled, brushing her hand with his thumb. "All right. I'll take the call from Tokyo in the lobby. Shouldn't be long." As Matthew walked toward a quiet seating area, Eleanor made her way to the customer service counter. Behind the desk sat a woman in her early 40s with immaculate blonde curls and crimson lipstick, Carla Brenner, assistant manager. She wore a tailored navy blazer and a nameplate that glinted under the recessed lights. "Good morning," Eleanor said kindly. "I'd like to make a deposit and open a new account for a nonprofit initiative." Carla's eyes swept from Eleanor's shoes to her hoodie, pausing at the frayed seam near the shoulder. Her smile flickered. "And do you currently bank with us?" "No, this would be new. It's for the Everlight Reading Project." Eleanor opened a slim manila folder and gently slid a check across the desk. Carla glanced down, her eyes widened ever so slightly. The check read, $250,000. Then her brows drew together. "That's quite a deposit," Carla said slowly. "May I ask where the funds came from?" "Annual gala," Eleanor replied. "All donations. We've included the 501c3 paperwork and verification." Carla didn't touch the folder. Her smile hardened. "We typically don't open accounts of this size without a more thorough review." "I understand," Eleanor said patiently. "Our CFO, Rachel, called ahead last week to confirm your process. She said these documents would suffice." Carla's voice grew just a notch louder, drawing the attention of a man in a charcoal suit nearby. "Well, I'm not sure what Rachel may have said, but for this amount, we need to be cautious. We've had irregularities before." A pang fluttered in Eleanor's chest. Still, she stayed steady. "I assure you, this is legitimate. We've helped over 8,000 kids in Colorado with our literacy programs. We're just expanding to a second location." Carla leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to be heard, yet clearly audible to anyone listening. "Mrs. Price, Eleanor Price. Mrs. Price, you'll forgive me, but people who handle this kind of money generally don't show up in gym clothes. It sets off a few alarms." Silence rippled. A woman waiting in line looked over her shoulder. The young man at the next terminal paused mid-signature. Eleanor felt her face heat. Her fingers tightened around the folder. She opened her mouth to reply. "Is there a problem here?" A deep voice interrupted. Carla turned, mid-sentence, and her expression froze. Matthew Price had approached without a sound. He stood beside his wife now, calm and composed. His voice held no anger, just clarity. "I believe my wife was attempting to open an account." Carla blinked. "Your wife?" "Yes. Eleanor Price. She runs the Everlight Foundation. I believe that's our donation check sitting untouched on your desk." Color drained from Carla's face. Her eyes darted between Eleanor's clothes and Matthew's presence, scrambling for a thread of professionalism. I wasn't aware." That's the issue, Eleanor said softly. Her voice had no bitterness, just truth. You weren't interested in the papers I handed you, just the clothes I wore when I walked in. The silence was deafening. Matthew turned to Eleanor. Would you like me to speak to management? She shook her head gently. Number. I'd like to finish the deposit. And then I think we'll find a bank that looks at paperwork before shoes. They turned, folder in hand, and walked away. Heads followed them, not because of what they wore, but because of what they stood for. Outside, sunlight streamed over the city. Matthew smiled. You handled that beautifully. Eleanor exhaled. I shouldn't have had to. No, he said. You shouldn't have, but you did, with dignity. She glanced up at him, and for a moment, the world felt still. Let's go find a place that knows what real worth looks like. Eleanor waited, standing tall despite the heat rising in her cheeks. Carla Brenner tapped her manicured nails against the marble counter, her eyes flicking from the check to Eleanor's hoodie like they were two pieces of a puzzle that couldn't possibly fit. This check, she said finally, is for $250,000. That's right, Eleanor replied calmly. It's the first wave of donations from our fall gala. We'll be using it to launch a new reading program in Pueblo. Carla's lips tightened. She still hadn't touched the folder. And you run this organization? I do, Eleanor said, offering a polite smile. We're a registered nonprofit. The paperwork is all there. Carla gave a small, incredulous laugh through her nose, like she'd heard a good joke at Eleanor's expense. I see, she said, dragging the words out slowly. And this is your first time banking with Granite West? Yes, Eleanor said. Your regional manager, Mr. Patel, spoke highly of your community support programs. That's why we chose you. Another beat of silence passed. Carla finally lifted the folder, but only just, and flipped through it with a pointed lack of urgency. You understand, she said, still flipping, that we have certain expectations here. Eleanor's brows drew in slightly. Expectations? Our clients tend to be a part of a specific profile. Business owners, executives, individuals who, well, let's just say, conduct themselves with a degree of Polish. She looked up, her gaze pointed at Eleanor's hoodie and tennis shoes. Eleanor's chest tightened. Still, her voice was steady. I'm not here for Polish. I'm here to open an account and deposit the funds for a literacy initiative that's already changing lives. A man 2 counters over looked up. Interest peaked. Carla noticed. She adjusted her tone, but not her attitude. And we want to ensure our institution doesn't become vulnerable to financial manipulation, she said a little louder. It's a significant check. We've had issues with check kiting and false nonprofits before. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Are you accusing me of fraud? I'm saying, Carla replied, folding the folder shut with a sharp click, that this is an unusually large sum for someone with no banking history with us and no professional presentation. Across the lobby, heads were starting to turn. A young couple by the coffee station had gone quiet. A teller nearby paused mid-transaction, glancing over with furrowed brows. Eleanor felt the weight of a dozen eyes, none of them kind, and yet she didn't budge. Our 501c3 documents are certified. The EIN is registered. Our last 3 years of tax filings are inside that folder, she said clearly. What you're implying is not only incorrect, it's disrespectful. Carla smirked. I'm just doing my job. No, Eleanor replied, her voice barely above a whisper. You're hiding bias behind protocol. Carla leaned in slightly. Mrs. Price, I'm not convinced this is the right banking relationship for someone of your profile. The words hung in the air like a slap. Eleanor blinked once. Her profile, the hoodie, the sweatpants, no heels, no designer bag, no glossy business card. She swallowed the tightness in her throat. If you won't process the deposit, please say so directly, she said, and I'll take it and my organization's future accounts elsewhere. Carla raised an eyebrow. You're welcome to, of course, but if you leave now, we won't be able to. I wasn't finished, Eleanor said, her voice firm now. I'd like you to state your refusal clearly, so I can report this interaction to Mr. Patel. The name stopped Carla mid-sentence. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her face shifted, but not to concern, to calculation. Behind Eleanor, the quiet sound of polished shoes echoed across the lobby. Matthew had noticed. Still on his call, he stood by the windows, eyes narrowed in their direction. When Eleanor glanced back, his expression alone gave her enough strength to face forward again. But she didn't need rescuing. She'd already chosen dignity. A silence stretched long and taut between the two women. "I'll inform Mr. Patel that our team wasn't ready for a partner like me," Eleanor said softly, gathering the folder. "But the next bank will be." And with that, she turned. A woman in sneakers, carrying a mission, and a fire Carla never saw coming. Eleanor's heart pounded behind her ribs. Carla Brenner's voice rose just enough to draw attention. "If you won't leave voluntarily, Mrs. Price," she said crisply, "I'll have to involve security. Granite West takes financial irregularities seriously." Silence followed. Eleanor's fingers slowly released the folder. Her arm dropped to her side. She didn't speak. The words, financial irregularities, hung in the air like smoke. Around her, the atmosphere shifted. A cough, a whisper, a printer chime. This was no longer a bank. It was a stage for humiliation. Carla stood tall, satisfied. Eleanor stood still. She wasn't angry, just tired of earning her place in rooms where she already belonged. Then, "Excuse me." The voice cut cleanly through the lobby, calm, deep, steady. Matthew Price walked across the marble floor, his phone tucked away, his jacket open. His presence froze the room. Carla turned, color drained from her face. "I'm sorry, sir," she started too quickly. "We're in the middle of a situation with this—" "I believe," Matthew interrupted, "you're handling a situation with my wife." The silence was instant. Even the keyboards behind the teller desks went quiet. Carla blinked. "Your wife?" "Yes, Eleanor Price, founder of the Everlight Foundation. The check you refused, it funds a literacy initiative that's helped thousands of kids." He glanced at the folder still in Eleanor's hand. "She came here, in person, to open an account and give your institution the chance to be part of something meaningful." Carla opened her mouth, then closed it. A teller near the corner gasped. Someone whispered, I didn't know," Carla stammered. "She didn't say—" "She didn't have to," Matthew replied, voice cold now. "You just didn't look." Eleanor exhaled, her spine straightening. Matthew turned to her, gently. "You all right?" She nodded. "I just wanted to do this the right way." "And you did," he said. "She didn't." Carla stood frozen, realization dawning as if the marble floor had become ice, cracking beneath her heels. Eleanor met her eyes. "There's no rule that says I need to wear a blazer to be believed. You made that up." "Mrs. Price, I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said," Eleanor replied. "And you said it loud enough for half the bank to hear." She turned to Matthew. "Let's go." Together, they walked out, past the stunned stares, past the silence where judgment had just lived. But Eleanor's steps had changed. They weren't hesitant. They were sure. Behind them, Carla stood still, her reflection blurred in the polished counter. Outside, under the wide Colorado sky, Matthew opened the door. Eleanor stepped through first, unapologetic, unshaken. "What now?" he asked. She looked down at the folder. "Now," she said, a quiet smile forming, "we find a bank that doesn't confuse clothing with character." By the time Eleanor and Matthew Price stepped into the cool autumn air, the glass doors of Granite West Bank hadn't even finished swinging shut behind them. Inside, the silence they left behind was pierced by the quick click of polished shoes. From the mezzanine above, Richard Callahan, the bank's regional president, had watched the confrontation unfold through a pane of soundproof glass. He didn't need audio to understand what had just happened. He came down the stairs fast. "Carla!" he said sharply. The manager flinched. "Mr. Callahan, I was just in my office. Now?" She paled but nodded and followed without a word. 15 minutes later, a bank associate appeared at the sidewalk where Eleanor and Matthew stood near their car. "Mr. and Mrs. Price," the young man asked gently, "Mr. Callahan would like a word, if you're willing." Eleanor glanced at Matthew. He gave a slight nod. "Only if you want to." "I do," she said quietly. "But this time, we do it in a room where people listen." The executive suite upstairs was all glass walls and quiet views of the Denver skyline. Richard Callahan stood as they entered. "Thank you for coming back," he said, his tone sincere. "Before anything else, Mrs. Price, on behalf of Granite West, I owe you an apology. A real one. Eleanor sat calmly. An apology is a start. Callahan's face softened. I agree. What happened out there, it doesn't reflect the values we claim to uphold. But clearly, it reflects the values we've allowed to fester. He glanced at Carla, seated across the room. Her once flawless poise had crumbled. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, her eyes no longer sharp, just quiet, as if finally seeing herself in a mirror. I'd like to hear what you need from us, Callahan said. Eleanor took a slow breath. What I need isn't just about me, or even my foundation. It's about the next person who walks in dressed like I did, maybe with less confidence, maybe without a husband in a $1,000 suit to stand behind her. She leaned forward, steady. You want to make it right? Then start with real training on how we see people. Implement policies that don't leave room for bias. And build a banking program that actually serves the nonprofits and community organizers doing the real work. Callahan nodded slowly, absorbing every word. We'll make those changes, all of them, and I'd like to partner with your foundation to help shape them. Eleanor didn't smile, but her posture softened slightly. Then you're on the right track. There was a knock at the door. It was Jacob, the young associate who had watched the earlier scene in the lobby. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but I thought Mrs. Price might want to know my younger sister used the Everlight program last year. She struggled with dyslexia. She read her first full chapter book this summer. She cried. We all did. Eleanor blinked, caught off guard. What's her name? Lena, he said, voice warm. She's applying for the youth writing workshop now. Carla looked up at him slowly. I read her essay, she said softly. In the Chronicle. I clipped it out. Jacob nodded. My son has learning differences, Carla added, her voice smaller now. I think I judged you because I thought I was supposed to be the one who had it all together, and I don't. Eleanor met her gaze. That's where change starts. Before they left, Callahan turned to Jacob. I want you to take point on Mrs. Price's account and help lead the community banking rollout. We need new eyes. The young man stood a little taller. Yes, sir. As they exited the bank a second time, the atmosphere had shifted. She walked away knowing the system might finally change because she hadn't just spoken up for herself. As evening fell over downtown Denver, the lobby of Granite West Bank had emptied. The once busy space now echoed with the soft rustle of closing folders and the hum of winding down printers. Carla Brenner stood near the employee exit, her tote bag slung over one shoulder, her blouse slightly wrinkled. The confident posture she wore earlier had vanished. She adjusted her coat, hesitated, then reached for the door. Carla. The voice was soft, gentle, not accusing. She turned to see Eleanor Price standing a few feet away, coat buttoned, expression calm, but unreadable. I didn't think you'd still be here, Carla said, startled. Just wrapping up paperwork with Jacob, Eleanor replied. He's sharp. Carla nodded, unsure of what else to say. A quiet pause passed between them. I wanted to say, Carla began, eyes dropping to the floor. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I judged you not for your documents, but because you didn't match what I thought success looked like. Eleanor didn't interrupt. She let the silence hold. My son struggles with reading, Carla continued, voice low. I saw that article your foundation helped publish. Jacob's sister wrote it. I clipped it. I think I reacted the way I did because I carry shame of my own. And when you walked in, so sure, I saw someone doing what I hadn't figured out yet. Eleanor's face softened. Carla, sometimes we judge others harshly because we're fighting battles no one sees. Carla's shoulders dropped. I don't want to be that kind of gatekeeper anymore, she whispered. Eleanor reached into her coat and pulled out a business card. We're holding a workshop next Thursday for parents of kids with learning differences. It's informal, support, stories, and tools that help. Carla hesitated, then took the card with shaky hands. My son's name is Eli, she said. He's 9. He tries so hard. I'd love to meet him, Eleanor replied. He's not broken, just wired differently. Carla's eyes welled with tears. I don't expect forgiveness. This isn't about forgiveness, Eleanor said. It's about opportunity, for Eli, for families like yours. Carla smiled, small but sincere. Thank you. Eleanor nodded, then turned to leave. Outside, Matthew waited at the curb with a quiet smile. How'd it go? He asked. Eleanor exhaled. Sometimes the most important walls we break down aren't in buildings. 6 months later, the lobby of Granite West Bank didn't look the same. The marble floors still gleamed, and the ceilings still soared, but the air felt different, lighter, more open. The long counters now featured a small rack with pamphlets in Spanish and English, community banking, equity programs, small nonprofit services. And on a spring afternoon filled with sun and promise, Eleanor Price stood at the front of a newly converted conference hall inside the bank. Behind her, a banner read, Granite West plus Everlight. Changing access, one family at a time. Before her sat a diverse group, nonprofit leaders, financial advisors, parents, and educators. At the front row, Jacob took notes with focused energy, now formally titled Community Engagement Lead. His quiet confidence had blossomed into leadership. Next to him sat Richard Callahan, the regional president who had acted swiftly after Eleanor's first visit. Today he was no longer defensive, just present, listening, learning, and 2 rows back, tucked in the corner but fully engaged, sat Carla Brenner. Her posture was different now, not smaller but softer. Beside her sat her son, Eli, swinging his feet as he doodled quietly in a notebook. Real change doesn't come from press releases or promises, she said. It happens when institutions and the people within them decide to see others differently, to listen instead of assume, to invest not just in capital, but in community. She glanced at Jacob, then at Carla. And sometimes that change starts with a painful moment, a hard truth. But if we choose growth over guilt, compassion over pride, that moment becomes a doorway. The audience nodded, some moved, others simply taking it all in. Eleanor paused. This partnership launched 8 weeks ago. Since then, we've opened financial access to 19 organizations that were previously overlooked. We've held 3 equity training sessions, and we've connected over 200 families to literacy support and inclusive learning tools. Scattered applause rose, not loud, but heartfelt. After the session, Eleanor stood near the exit, greeting attendees one by one. Carla approached last, holding Eli's hand and a slim folder. "I wanted to show you this," she said. "It's Eli's latest reading assessment." Eleanor opened the folder. The metrics showed dramatic improvement, but more than that, there was a photo paper-clipped inside. Eli smiling beside a poster titled, "My Favorite Book, Charlotte's Web." "Eli picked it himself," Carla said, her voice thick. "He reads a few pages every night, sometimes out loud, just to make me laugh." Eleanor beamed. "That's beautiful." Carla hesitated. "I think about that day a lot, about who I was and who I never want to be again." Eleanor met her gaze. "And yet, here you are, showing up, helping others find their way too." Carla blinked back tears. "I don't know how to say thank you." "You just did," Eleanor replied, handing back the folder. "And the best way you can say it again is to help the next person who walks in looking like I did and treat them like they belong." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, Eleanor and Matthew walked through the community garden that had inspired it all, the first Everlight project. Now, herbs and vegetables stretched toward the sky. Children's painted stones lined the paths, bearing words like grow, believe, and start here. Matthew took her hand. "You always said dignity was contagious," he said. She smiled. "And so is change." They paused beside a sunflower taller than both of them. "One person at a time?" he asked. "One story at a time," she said. And they walked on, into a future they were no longer imagining but building. This story reminds us that true character is never measured by appearance, but by how we treat others, especially those we're quick to underestimate. Through Eleanor's quiet strength and choice to lead with grace instead of anger, we witness the power of compassion to spark real, lasting change. Institutions evolve when individuals choose to see differently, listen fully, and act courageously. It only takes one moment of dignity to ripple outward, reshaping hearts, policies, and entire communities. In a world so often ruled by judgment, this story challenges us to choose empathy and to never mistake simplicity for insignificance. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to join our channel and share in the comments. Join us next time for another story that reminds us of life's most meaningful lessons.